Hello and welcome to episode 560 of the official EstablishTheRun.com podcast. My name is Adam Levitan, as always joined by Evan Silva, and today is a momentous day here on the show, an annual holiday of sorts, certainly better than the dusty holidays like Thanksgiving. Yes, it is the official Evan Silva Top 150 Rankings Release Show. Almost makes you feel happy to be alive. Evan, how's it going?
Well, I appreciate that scintillating introduction. But I just want the people to know, like, this is a rough draft. It takes me like a long time to do this first set of top 150 rankings because I'm just doing it all from scratch. I mean, I literally rank like almost every relevant skill position player for almost like a top 400, top 500 at each position. And then I sort them so that, you know, it goes 1 through to 150. So this is very much a rough draft. I just started my first draft of the entire offseason. You know, I always like to check my rankings against my actual convictions in the draft room. I also want to see where other people stand on specific players. So once I start doing more drafts and, you know, the team previews always have a big influence on my top 150, and the tiers also contribute to my convictions. That'll be the next thing that I start working on is the tiers, the positional tiers. But this is very much a rough draft, but I also like that, you know, I mean, it's some place to start. And I think that I am starting to come to grips with the players that I actively want to be higher than ADP on. And that's really what the 150 is all about. Mm-hmm. It's like, listen, we will draft a guy at a certain point. You know, he's going to be in our top 150. We're going to have him ranked, but we are not going to draft him above or at his ADP. And there are other guys we are willing to reach a round or two in order to take. So that's really what the 150 is all about. It's all like adjusted versus ADP.
Yeah. And we'll talk about this stuff. I mean, this is obviously going to be the focus of the show as we get to peak drafting season there in August and September. Guys, frankly, we're higher or lower on the market is what this is all about for sure. So we're going to talk about the top 150 today. The first top 150, the first part of Evan's process getting ready for the 2023 fantasy football season. That Evan's first 150 is up on the site right now for Draft Kit subscribers. Today, we're going to talk about where he differs most from the market right now. Some really interesting ones, I think. Also, as part of Draft Kit Pro, we have rankings up for every best ball. These are take into account Silva's opinions, but the rankings that are not Silva's top 150 are staff opinions, projection-based, model-based, etc. Before we get into it here, I'm sure most of you listen to this on our podcast feed. Wanted to let you know that you're going to be missing a lot of content that we make specifically for YouTube. For example, we do quick videos on undervalued players. We do live streams where we analyze drafts and lots more. These videos will not hit the podcast feed. So go to YouTube and search Establish the Run and subscribe to the channel. Hitting that subscribe button really does help us out. We'll make sure you know when we post new stuff. That's youtube.com/establish the run and click subscribe. All right, Evan, let's start with a running back coming off of an ACL tear in Breece Hall. You have Breece Hall 30th overall, running back 12. Market is a little bit higher on him, 25 overall, running back 10. We remember Breece Hall tore his ACL in October, late October of last year. Reports on Breece Hall's injury are better than Javonte Williams, for what it's worth. Evan, what do you think about Breece Hall's outlook here? You're a little bit lower than market.
Yeah, and I feel good about that. I mean, I love what Breece Hall did as a rookie, but he tore his ACL on October 28th. They were connected to Jamal Williams in free agency at one point. They were strongly connected. And I don't know if I necessarily believe it, but to take Jahmyr Gibbs at number 15 overall. Mm-hmm. Zonovan Knight gave him some good carries last year. He's back. Michael Carter is a quality NFL back. He's returning. They drafted in the 5th round Israel Abinakanda. So I think that the Jets are playing this cautiously with regard to Breece Hall's recovery. And I think that I want to play it, and I want to have other people can draft Breece Hall aggressively. I will take him not at his ADP, certainly not above his ADP. I will take him after his ADP, but I'm going to play this one cautiously, at least for now.
Yeah, and I'm with that. It's early, and I think that, you know, some of the anytime you tweet about or talk about ACL recoveries, everybody comes in with the, oh, but what about Adrian Peterson? There's going to be outliers. Adrian Peterson is like a total freak of nature. And yeah, ACL recoveries have gotten better in recent years, but there still can be complications, as we saw with J.K. Dobbins last year. But yeah, I think Breece is certainly much closer to full health than Javonte Williams, but it's still something to keep an eye on. So I'm fine with that one, lower the market on Breece Hall. The next one is a guy you are very much higher than market on, Rhamondre Stevenson. Silva has 16th overall, the running back 6. Market is closer to 29-30 overall, RB 11. Now, we talked about this some with the James Robinson rumor. Maybe he won't make the team. They still have Pierre Strong. They have Kevin Harris somewhere down there. What do you think about being so far above market on Rhamondre Stevenson?
I've been doing this for the last couple of years, and I'm going to stick to my guns here and continue to be well above market on Rhamondre Stevenson, who was awesome. And his competition for touches in New England is really, really weak, unless you think Pierre Strong is going to take a big leap from really just being a special teamer as a rookie. Kevin Harris didn't really show us much. James Robinson showed very, very little. I mean, he got benched by the Jets, who traded for him.
The Jaguars and the Jets both gave up on James Robinson.
Yeah. And I mean, he's one of the Achilles victims, and it's really hard for those guys to come back. He had some success with the Jaguars early in the season, but it was primarily because he was hitting long runs, and it's just he wasn't efficient, and it was volatile, and they wound up getting rid of him. And then Ty Montgomery, who the Patriots have always had a fascination with. But I mean, this guy is not a scary threat, I don't think, to Rhamondre Stevenson, who not only is a bull between the tackles, but also is an excellent receiving back. This dude caught 69 balls last season. I really like the way that the Patriots' offensive line is coming together as well. Trent Brown is back at left tackle. They signed Riley Reif to be like a league average right tackle. He'll compete with Connor McDermott. Mike Onwenu is back at guard. Cole Strange, who they took, remember in the first round, they got a bunch of crap from the Rams about taking Cole Strange in the first round, and the Rams sucked, and Cole Strange was awesome. And then David Andrews back at center. So I think this team also, they have some legitimate uncertainty at quarterback too. So I think they're going to run the crap out of the ball. Rhamondre Stevenson is going to be their offensive centerpiece, and he's proven that he's really, really good. So to me, I think he's absolutely a middle of the second round pick, and it's actually shocking to me. Well, I shouldn't say it's shocking, because every year people try to you can't draft Patriots running backs, which, by the way, has been a severe losing strategy for the last decade, because you could always get him cheap. Now, the argument against this is that Rhamondre Stevenson is going to be expensive, but he should be expensive for all the reasons that I just listed.
So my big thing on Rhamondre Stevenson that people I think maybe don't realize, last year Rhamondre Stevenson had a streak. I believe it was 7 straight games with a 20% or more target share. That doesn't happen at the running back position unless you're completely elite like Eckler or CMC. This dude is very, very good in the pass game. I think that's important this year because the Patriots have one of the hardest schedules I have seen in a very, very long time. They have an absolutely brutal schedule this year, do the Patriots. And so you need Rhamondre Stevenson to be out there when they're losing. I think he will be. Maybe some people think Pierre Strong is a better pass catcher back, but I think Rhamondre is the heavy favorite for that role. I wouldn't be quite as high as Evan is on Rhamondre just because I think the Patriots are legit suck. They could be really, really bad, and they have a hard schedule. But I do like Rhamondre Stevenson this year, and there's certainly room where the market's taking him right now to be a little bit higher. Go to Seahawks. So Evan is higher than market pretty significantly on DK Metcalf. That's DK Metcalf is Silva's wide receiver 12. We're closer to wide receiver 17. Lockett, Evan is also higher on wide receiver 26. Market is closer to wide receiver 33. JSN, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Silva is lower on wide receiver 36. We're closer to wide receiver 32. I think we've talked plenty about how both of us think Seattle's pass game is going to be very, very good this year. How do you parse between DK, Lockett, JSN, and were you aware that you're below market on JSN?
Yeah, and I'm fine with that because I like being significantly ahead of market on both DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. These are proven NFL players. Jackson Smith and Jigba played in 2 football games last year. And I think he's going to be good. I think he can step right in and catch 70, 75 balls, no problem in the slot for Seattle. But Tyler Lockett has been doing this a long time. I've been than ADP on him for a long time as well, and that has been a successful strategy with DK Metcalf. And look, Tyler Lockett is going into his age 31 season. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, there are some concerns, but I didn't think that he showed signs of slowdown last year. And then with DK Metcalf, you know, I think he could have an absolute monster season. We know that that's in his range of potential outcomes. He's going to have Lockett more of an outside receiver opposite him this year. They'll have more of a threat in the slot because for the past few years, and they try to draft D. Eskridge, and, you know, they play guys like Freddie Swain in there. And, you know, that third receiver was just a total non-factor. DK Metcalf is the clear-cut outside boundary receiver in Seattle. And he's also got a bunch of positive touchdown regression coming to him. Over the previous 2 seasons, he's scored 22 touchdowns, only had 6 last year. Yeah. Really didn't have that great of a year last year. His career low in yards per target, you know, his yards per game were down. Yeah. I think that he could absolutely explode in this second year with Geno Smith. And we talked about it on the award show. We both brought up Geno Smith as like a potential MVP long shot. I like leaning into the Seahawks offense, especially because it seems like people don't trust him, except for whatever reason, Jackson Smith and Jigba, who I think that they're overdrafting.
So right now, rookies are people are falling all over themselves to draft rookies. And that's why you see JSN inflated. You see in our rankings, if you go to like our underdog rankings, you'll see that we're a little bit lower on a lot of rookies than other people. We think it's gone too far on some of these rookies. One thing I'll say about DK Metcalf is that early in his career, he had a huge ADOT, average depth of target. He had huge yards per catch. That was with Russell Wilson. That's what Russell Wilson does well. Geno Smith is much more conservative, much closer to the line of scrimmage. And so you saw last year, 11.6 yards per catch for DK Metcalf is really low for a guy with his ability. So, you know, it's just a function, I think, of the way Geno played more than the way DK played, but it doesn't mean that DK can't rack up a ton here.
Well, I feel like now that they have 2 really good short to intermediate receivers in Tyler Lockett and Jackson Smith and Jigba, maybe that ADOT can be expanded a little bit, and we could see more big plays down the football field and also more plays in the red zone because 6 touchdowns. I mean, DK Metcalf is a 10 touchdown guy.
Yep. A guy that the market's been rising on, but Evan's been high on, I know, for the last month or so, or ever since the draft at least, is Dameon Pierce. Evan's at 43 overall in Dameon Pierce. Market is closer to 56, 60 overall on Dameon Pierce. They did add Devin Singletary. They did not address the running back position, though, early in the draft. And so Dameon Pierce gets a little vote of confidence there. One thing I'm interested in with Texans, I've heard you talk about it. I've heard Brandon Thorne talk about it. Offensive line play for the Texans this year could actually be reasonable or maybe even good. I don't know. We have to talk to Thorne more about that. But yeah, go ahead on Dameon Pierce.
Yeah, so Dameon Pierce escaped the draft with no added competition. They've got guys like Devin Singletary and Mike Boone. Devin Singletary is really just a guy. Fine little number 2 back. We've always liked Mike Boone, but teams never, you know, make any sort of a commitment to giving him the rock. And he'll play special teams for them and be a contributor in that way. And then Dory Ogunbowale. I mean, that rounds out their top 4, and that's just totally underwhelming competition. Dameon Pierce kind of slowed down late in the season. He got hurt. But, man, there was a point at which you could argue that he was top 2, top 3 for offensive rookie of the year, like 10 weeks into the season last year. I think the Texans can be better, which will contribute to more positive game script, but still not good enough that he's not going to get a lot of receiving opportunities because he's good in the passing game. I mean, he was good in the passing game in college, and he was pretty good last year as well. And then you mentioned the offensive line, Laramie Tunsil, probably a top 3 left tackle in the league. Titus Howard, who was a first-round pick, he'll be at right tackle. They stole Shaq Mason away from the Patriots for like a 6th-round pick swap. He'll be starting at right guard. Kenyon Green, who they drafted in the first round, is going to be their last year is going to be their starting left guard. He had a rocky beginning to his rookie season, but over the final 4 or 5 games, he was really good. So I expect him to take a second-year leap. And then at center right now, I think it's going to be Juice Scruggs, who they drafted in the 2nd round. So, yes, I think their offensive line has a chance to be legitimately really good this year. And I think that Dameon Pierce is going to be just a huge part of their offense, breaking in a rookie quarterback in CJ Stroud.
I mean, Dameon Pierce last year was very viable. I played him in DFS a bunch until the wheels started to kind of come off of the team. If the team can be more stable this year, and CJ Stroud, I think, gives them a chance to do so, Dameon Pierce role very, very strong. Keenan Allen is a guy you're lower on than market. You have Keenan Allen 60th overall, wide receiver 27. Keep in mind, Evans ranks R for half PPR, not full PPR. Market's closer to 44th overall, wide receiver 22. Keenan is 31 years old now. They did add Quentin Johnston. We all now know, I think, that Austin Eckler is going to be back with the team. So it's getting crowded there for sure. Lower than market, though, Evan. I feel like Keenan's a guy you're normally higher on. Maybe not. I don't know. But what do you think about being lower than market on Keenan?
Yeah, it's just and he's such a volume receiver. He's an aging volume receiver with significantly increased target competition. So this is just a guy that, look, and he's had a great career and all that. And I still think he probably catches 85, 90 balls, but like only for 850, 900 yards. And then it could just come down to touchdowns. And he's not really, a huge touchdown scorer, especially as his athleticism starts to diminish. So, yeah, I mean, it's getting crowded there, man. And we know that he historically has been better, or, Austin Eckler takes away from Keenan Allen's short area stuff. And then Quentin Johnson is a big target after the catch. There have been times when it seemed like Mike Williams was taking over as their their go-to guy. It's just a lot of dudes there. And I would rather not put my money on an aging possession receiver.
Yeah, full PPR, I think Keenan looks better, right? Like those 7 for 70 games are actually pretty good in full PPR for sure. Quarterback that Evan is higher on the market is Jordan Love. And I thought this one was really interesting. Evan's at QB 16 on Jordan Love. Market's closer to QB 19. If you look at the Packers schedule, and I hate to do this because defense stuff is not that sticky. It can change a lot. But man, Packers have a really soft opposing defense schedule. They do not face a lot of tough defenses. Jordan Love, I think they're going to institute a run-heavy attack, but they do have some weapons out there for Jordan Love. In Christian Watson, they drafted Jaden Reed in the second round. I like being higher than market here on Evan. I just didn't feel too comfortable with it. What do you think about Jordan Love's prospects this year? I feel like we haven't talked about him at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's still so late in the draft. I mean, I have him 132 overall, and market is at 154.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just it just doesn't really matter at that point. I will say that one of the reasons that I have, and I'm not even a believer in Jordan Love, okay? But they just have put a lot around him. I mean, I think their offensive line has a chance to be really, really good. They've got the two backs. They've got Aaron Jones coming back. He's really good in the passing game. Christian Watson absolutely is a candidate for a leap. People are really high on Christian Watson, by the way, in drafts. I don't think I'm too much lower than on ADP than him, but I was a little bit surprised at how aggressive they were, or that ADP is right now. And I think Romeo Doubs will be better in year 2. And I like how they use those early picks on the tight ends. I mean, I think that they're building the right way around Jordan Love. He wasn't a big runner in college. He wasn't very good in college.
Yeah.
But he wasn't a big runner in college, but I know that he's got that in his bag. I mean, he is a good athlete. So I don't know, quarterback 16, somewhere between quarterback 16 and quarterback 19. That's where I'm going to land on Jordan Love. It's just, he's a late round quarterback.
Yep. I think he's an interesting one, though. Again, I think for the reasons Evan said, the schedule, what stuff they put around him, I think he's an interesting late round quarterback. For people drafting best ball right now, like those QB2s and QB3s can make all the difference in the world. Let's go to a wide receiver. Evan is way lower than market on Courtland Sutton. Silva's at 130 overall, wide receiver 53. Market's closer to wide receiver 39, 81st overall. This is a massive gap being out on Courtland Sutton. Evan, people are going to have questions about this one. Go ahead on him.
Well, I mean, sometimes I have biases, and sometimes, I think it's hard to always resist the biases. So I just rather talk about them. And I think with Courtland Sutton, I was too high on him last year. And so it's possible I'm doing some overcorrection here. But I also think that there are some real concerns here. Number one, I'm not 100% convinced that he's going to start out start out the season with the Broncos. I mean, I think that there's a chance that he could be traded. That could actually be a good thing. And in that case, then I'd probably move him up.
Mm-hmm.
But I think he lost explosiveness coming off his injury last year. Tim Patrick is back. They traded up for Marvin Mims in the second round, which was kind of confusing, but it makes more sense if you think that they're not big on Courtland Sutton. And then I have Jerry Jeudy above market.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just how things are kind of falling into place for me. I think Jerry Jeudy can have a really big breakout year. And I don't think that that's going to happen for Courtland Sutton. And I think that actually if he stays in Denver, he could end up as their number 3 receiver, if not number 4, assuming that Tim Patrick comes back healthy and Marvin Mims steps in and grabs immediate playing time.
Yeah, I mean, Evan mentioned they traded up for Marvin Mims. Marvin Mims was the first pick of the Sean Payton era. Like they traded up, like they clearly wanted to make a stamp with Marvin Mims. Courtland Sutton last year was a mess, but the entire offense was broken. I mean, they were 31st in touchdowns per game, 23rd in yards per play. Everybody assumes that Sean Payton is going to get that going and get that going in the right direction. If he doesn't, though, Broncos are going to be overdrafted once again. I don't know, man. I still think Courtland Sutton's a talented guy. He's another year removed from the injury. I'm fine being lower than market on Courtland Sutton, but I don't know. I still think there's a chance for him. I do prefer Jerry Jeudy, though. There's no doubt about that. Let's go to a sleeper tight end. Evan is about 20 spots above market on. That's Jawan Johnson. So I agree. I love the Jawan Johnson stuff. They added Foster Moreau, who's coming back from, I believe, a cancer recovery. Shout out to him. That's awesome for him. They also have Taysom Hill behind Jawan Johnson. I know I've talked about schedules a lot on here. The Saints, Evan, holy cow. They have one of the softest schedules you could possibly draw up in the entire NFL. And as we saw with the Eagles last year, when you have a really soft schedule like that, you just end out scoring a lot of touchdowns. And like, I don't think it's crazy for the Saints to score a ton of touchdowns this year. And that's what Jawan Johnson certainly did well last year. I like this one. Evan, any more thoughts on being higher than market on Jawan Johnson?
Yeah, and I feel really good about this one, actually. I think that a lot of people got scared off by Foster Moreau, but I'm not. I mean, they're very different players. Jawan Johnson is a big move tight end, converted wide receiver. Foster Moreau is like a classic Y inline tight end who's, recovering from cancer. Jawan Johnson, I'm trying to look at his deal right now. Yeah, 2 years, $12 million. I mean, I thought that was pretty good for him. 2 years, $12 million for a player who was not drafted. So the Saints made a legitimate commitment to him, and I love his fit with Derek Carr's skill set. I mean, it's Darren Waller all over again. And I think that, the wide receiver core in New Orleans is fairly unimposing. I'm not sure what to think of Michael Thomas at this point. I mean, he hasn't played quality football in a real long time. Chris Olave is a stud, but he's, a particular type of receiver. Rashid Shaheed is obviously very interesting, but I think that he's also generally a role player. I think Jawan Johnson is going to play a lot, and I think he's going to riff with Derek Carr. And he's at the top of my list of like the tight ends in, let's say, the tight end 10 to 15 range, which, every year maybe one of those guys pops. But I think Jawan Johnson has maybe the best chance of that group to pop.
Yeah, and in that range, I want my tight ends to be touchdown scorers because so much of the position is tied up in touchdown scoring, and Jawan Johnson showed last year he can certainly score touchdowns. Daniel Jones, the topic of much consternation on this show, led me to the promised land last year, but I'm afraid that maybe the market has gone too far on Daniel Jones. I mean, we're talking like we have 88 overall, QB 10 on Daniel Jones. Silva's way lower, 123 overall, QB 14. Daniel Jones only threw for 3,200 yards and 15 touchdowns in 16 games last year. I mean, that is flat out bad in today's NFL. However, he had like no one to throw to. They have surrounded him with maybe not stars, but now they have Waller and they draft Jalen Hyatt and they get a bunch of guys back healthy like Wandale, hopefully. And so he has way more weapons around him this year to improve the throwing. The question though is, can he sustain the rushing? I mean, last year, I believe he had 7 rushing touchdowns. Yeah, seven rushing touchdowns and 708 yards rushing in 16 games. A lot's changed here though, Evan. You're lower than market on Daniel Jones. What do you think about him?
Yeah, a lot has changed. And I think that Darren Waller has an opportunity to move the needle. I just don't know if any of these receiver cores, and I mean, they've got 8 wide receivers who have played or have the potential to play quality snaps in the NFL, But I mean, there's no clear-cut number 1 wide receiver here. There might not even be a clear-cut number 2 wide receiver for the Giants for, relative to other teams. Yeah, I would say that they don't have even a clear number 2 receiver in the NFL. They've got just a bunch of guys who are going to compete for snaps and probably not move the needle. Again, Darren Waller could move the needle, but Darren Waller also, he's been like a little bit of a disappointment the last couple of seasons. The Raiders traded him away. Daniel Jones was the quarterback 9 last year, and as you mentioned, he scored 7 rushing touchdowns. He should experience positive regression when it comes to his passing touchdown count, but he's probably going to take a step back from rushing. I don't know. Maybe I'm too low on him, but I mean, I have him quarterback 14. He's firmly in the top 150. We'll see. When I get to the quarterback tiers, that's really when I firm up in terms of my quarterback rankings. We'll see how it shakes out, but I feel okay about where I have him right now.
Yeah, I mean, there's a big difference between where we were getting Daniel Jones last year and where he goes this year. I think the best case from a schematic standpoint is Daboll says, listen, man, we got to play a more aggressive, open offense this year to score more points, period. We have all these wide receivers we added now. Let's let Daniel Jones drop back and throw it more. That's the best case. But yeah, improving on last year, I think, is going to be hard when, as Evan said, he finished as a QB9. Let's go to backup running back Kenny Gainwell. Silva is at RB 38. We are pretty significantly lower than that. Now, in terms of DeAndre Swift, Evan is lower than market on DeAndre Swift. In terms of Rashad Penny, Evan is a little bit higher than market on Rashad Penny. Maybe we should just talk about this backfield as a whole. Evan, how are you thinking about Gainwell, Swift, and Penny and how they're going to shake out in fantasy?
Yeah, so I think that Penny is going to be the clear-cut early down back, but his injury history, I know that it's probably mainly the result of bad luck, but I mean his injury history is extensive. I like the acquisition in real life of DeAndre Swift. I thought that he was worth it for a 2025 4th round pick or whatever. But also, I mean, I also think that he's a niche back, and I think that some of those problems that plagued him in Detroit with the coaching staff kind of not being sold on his physicality and his ability to stand up to significant workloads. I mean, that could follow him into Philadelphia. How sure are we that DeAndre Swift is going to play ahead of Kenneth Gainwell? Because I think they really like Kenneth Gainwell. If you look at the trajectory of his usage over the course of last season, remember, he made a move on Miles Sanders at one point. I think he's good. He's very athletic. He's always been very good in the passing game. And I don't think he's going to start off the season as a guy that we can even probably consider even as a flex option. But I feel like by week 4, week 5, Kenneth Gainwell in this offense, behind this offensive line, with his versatile, his all-purpose skill set, I think he absolutely could be a fantasy factor sooner rather than later. I may be a little too high on him right now, but I can tell you for sure that he's a player that I want to get as my RB4, RB5, and at least just have him on my bench to begin the season.
Yeah, Gainwell was a guy I took a ton of in best ball last year with late round running back picks where a couple things break right. You get a bunch of catches from Kenny Gainwell. It looks really good. I think the concern people have this year is that DeAndre Swift and Kenny Gainwell's skill set overlaps so heavily. Whereas last year, Kenny Gainwell's skill set did not overlap with Miles Sanders or Boston Scott. And so that's why Kenny Gainwell is going so late. If you think the Lions stuff was real, i.e. they didn't like him, he didn't run tough enough, he didn't execute, et cetera, and maybe Philly staff will feel the same way, then I think Gainwell is being underdrafted. But yeah, it's a really interesting backfield. We'll talk a ton more about that. Oh, quickly, Evan, we talked so much about the Dalvin Cook versus Alexander Madison thing. I talked about it on Market Monday for a while. We've talked about it 4 times. I'm tired of talking about it. I am interested, though, if we assume that Dalvin Cook is gone, who you prefer between Ty Chandler and the McBride kid that they drafted, because I know you do have Ty Chandler very high in your 150.
Yeah, I have Ty Chandler as a top 120 player right now, and I guess he's not even people aren't even taking him in drafts.
Right.
Trying to get out ahead of this one because I don't think that Dalvin Cook is going to be a member of the 2023 Vikings. I think it was Anthony Amico or Ian Hartitz or both of them that were noted that on the Vikings 2023 banner, that
Twitter banner, yes, Twitter banner,
Twitter banner, Dalvin Cook is not on there, and Alexander Mattison is.
Yeah.
Alexander Mattison can ball, man. I mean, he's a quality receiving back, and he weighs 225 pounds, and he runs with abandon between the tackles. Am I not ahead of market enough on him? I mean, obviously, I'm going to have to move him up.
No, yeah. The market is just being stubborn on Alexander Mattison. I mean, we've been way higher than market on Mattison, so yeah.
Okay. But Ty Chandler, I think, is the next guy up. The McBride kid, I mean, he's a 7th-round rookie. Is he even going to make the team? You know, that's always a legit question for 7th-round rookies. Ty Chandler has a lot of speed. I mean, he ran 4.36 coming out with a 1.46 10-yard split. I can't remember. Was he a guy that you were playing in preseason DFS last year?
I believe so.
I think he's the next dude up, you know, and that would be the number 2 back behind a running back in Alexander Mattison, who, although I absolutely believe in his ability to hold up or to give you like legit 20 carry, 4 catch games, he also has never done that over the course of a full NFL season because he's been a backup to this point. So Ty Chandler is definitely a guy I want to take late in drafts and maybe be my last round pick.
Yeah, I think that's super sharp, and especially in these best ball leagues where you're trying to be unique. Guys who are not drafted in every league are super, super valuable. Just one more thing on Mattison. I mean, every time Dalvin Cook's been out, he has handled huge workloads. As Evan said, doesn't mean he can do it for the whole season, but they have not hesitated to give Alexander Mattison huge workloads when Dalvin Cook has been out.
And I would say that if you're in a dynasty league right now, and oftentimes in dynasty league, they have open off-season waivers, and especially after the rookie drafts are done. And if you have the opportunity to just go grab Ty Chandler, like, you know, drop some dude that you really have never, you have no intention of ever using, go grab Ty Chandler, just put him at the end of your bench and see how this plays out. Because if Dalvin Cook gets moved or released, then Ty Chandler all of a sudden, I mean, he's going to be, he'll be in everybody's top 150, I would think.
Yep. I actually just made a move in a dynasty league that I'm in. I dropped Charlie Kolar in a tight end premium league and picked up Travion Williams, but I should check if Ty Chandler is out there also. Anyways, speaking of Bengals running backs, Evan is way ahead of market on Joe Mixon. This is one that I've talked about on Market Monday a ton. I've been taking Joe Mixon way ahead of ADP also since the draft. Evan is at 38 overall, RB15. Market is closer to 60th overall, RB20. Actually, market is actually below that. I mean, we've been ahead of market with Joe Mixon, and Evan is even higher than that. So I don't know, Evan. I think a big vote of confidence for Joe Mixon's situation, at least coming out of the draft.
Yeah, I mean, and as I was doing his ranking in particular, I mean, you know, I looked up a ton of stuff to make sure that I wasn't missing something. And there are still some concerns from his off-field incident, and he didn't play super well last year. But man, the Bengals' lack of movement in terms of making, you know, running back additions. I mean, all they did was draft Chase Brown, who I kind of like in the 5th round out of Illinois. But I mean, they let Samaje Perine walk. They've tried to talk up Travion Williams, who's been on the team for years, and they never used. And then Chris Evans, I mean, I think that we can kind of decipher that they just see him as like a lightly used role player. So Joe Mixon in a really good offense behind an offensive line that I think is still kind of on the upswing. You know, he's got a ton of familiarity with the offense and everything. I mean, yeah, he's a guy that I'm willing to draft like significantly above ADP right now. I think that his ADP will normalize a little bit as we get closer to the season. But I mean, now's the time to take him because you can get him at a severe discount, I think, relative to how he's going to be being drafted in 3 months.
He's going to be a 3rd round pick in half PPR by the time September comes. Like I'm pretty confident in that. Joe Mixon is, you know, I get that he wasn't good last year. He lost a ton of pass down work to Samaje Perine. Samaje Perine is now gone. Joe Burrow is one of the best throwers of the football to the running back position in the NFL. And so I think, you know, like an upgrade. People are taking him way later, but it's actually an upgrade in usage. I get that Joe Mixon was not good last year and looked slow at times. But man, just from a usage perspective.
Except for in that game where he scored 5 touchdowns against the
game where he scored 5 touchdowns, yes. Kyle Pitts is obviously a sore subject a lot. Silva is at tight end 7. Model came out with Kyle Pitts at tight end 5. I don't have a lot of conviction around tight ends 4 through 7 here. Silva has that order. Dallas Goedert first, then Kittle, then Waller, then Pitts. Our model-based rankings have Kittle first, then Pitts, then Goedert, then Waller. Again, I don't have strong conviction on how all 4 of these guys should go, but Evan, I'm sure people want your Kyle Pitts take. Can we face going back to the well on Kyle Pitts? It's a lot cheaper this year, I'll say that.
I just have the exact same take as you on this range of tight ends. They're all kind of smashed into this tier, and I'll probably shuffle them around 80 times before we get to week 1, so I don't know. I struggle to have any convictions when I rank these guys initially, and I feel like that's going to continue to be the case for the remainder of the offseason.
My Kyle Pitts thing is like, he had 1,000 yards as a rookie. Marcus Mariota was so bad last year. I mean, outlier bad in terms of catch rate for Kyle Pitts, outlier bad in terms of catch rate on deep balls. Like they just could not connect ever throughout the whole year. And I don't think Desmond Ridder's good, but it's got to be better than Mariota. So I'm leaving the light on for Kyle Pitts when he goes in like the 70s and stuff like that. Yeah. Last one I want to talk about here. Evan has all 3 Baltimore wide receivers in the top 110 and Mark Andrews pretty high. Now, I think we all agree that Todd Monken and this Baltimore pass game is going to get a step up in volume and hopefully in efficiency as well. They're pretty talented. It's hard, though, for Lamar Jackson, who, by the way, has never thrown for more than 3,100 yards in a season, to support 4 pass catchers in the top 110. But, Evan, tell the people how you're thinking about all these guys, Flowers, Bateman, Odell.
Yeah, I also have Lamar Jackson ahead of ADP. So yes. I am very, very excited about the Ravens offense. Moving from Greg Roman, who I liked, but I mean, he had his limitations because he was so run-oriented, to Todd Monken, who's like big on vertical passing and has a long history of passing game success and success with aggressive downfield passing games. And all of a sudden, I think that the Ravens have the requisite weapons to accomplish that. At the same time, like you got to know that the top 150 is not, this is not like just ranking everybody in terms of their stat projections. Mm-hmm. So what I did is I kind of hedged here, and I kind of jammed in the Ravens' top 3 receivers, all sort of, toward the back end of the top 150, because I kind of don't know who's going to emerge as their number 1. I couldn't say that for sure. I mean, Mark Andrews is the number 1, okay? But at wide receiver, I don't know. And they could actually all end up canceling each other out to an extent. This was a little bit of a hedge. I don't know. How would you treat this one?
Yeah, my take is that Odell has not played well. I mean, Odell hasn't had a good season, I would say, since 2018 with the Giants. He hasn't had a great season since 2016. And now he's coming off of a serious knee injury. My take would be, I love your point that rankings are not projections. Like, it is so different, rankings versus projections. If I was doing this from kind of trying to middle it, I would probably just dump Odell out and just not have Odell in top 150. He's 30 years old. But, maybe that's too harsh on Odell, and he probably does belong in the top 150. It's just not all 3 of these guys are going to get there, I guess, is my point. And
I would agree with that.
Right. Yeah. And so the one that I would bet most on not getting there would be Odell, but, we'll see. That's age model, very proprietary age model. All right. If you guys are interested in seeing Evan's full top 150, it is available now for Draft Kit subscribers. If you don't have the Draft Kit yet, hit the subscribe tab and check that out. If you want access to all our best ball and dynasty content, you do need Draft Kit Pro. That is also available in the subscribe tab right now. Appreciate everyone being here. Appreciate everyone listening. Be sure you're following me on Twitter at Adam Levitan. Evan is at Evan Silva, all one word on both. And you can follow us at Establish the Run on Twitter as well. For Evan, for producer Luke, the top 150 is live. Good luck, everybody.